Oh, sweet.
They gave us new points.
Shout
Thanks for
out to
making
the
Locked On Mavs your first listen every single day. Let's get into the Dirk Nowitzki top 75 greatest players ever, Isaac Harris.
Let's go. More like top 20, but top 75.
But they're naming the top 75. He was not in the 50 greatest players ever, because I don't think he was in the league at that time, or
No, he
maybe he's
wasn't.
really early in his career, but he was named that. So I don't want to gloss by this. This was actually a really big deal for Dirk. It's a big deal for the Mavericks. He's probably, I guess Jason Kidd will probably make it. Steve Nash did make it. So like, if you're trying to name how many Mavericks will be on this, he's the only like real prominent one that's going to be on this list. And he
Unless.
was, unless they'd put Luka in there. But Dirk Nowitzki was named. What does it mean for Dirk, the Mavericks, and everything that Dirk was named to this list?
I mean, yeah, it was a given. It was a lock. We all knew this was going to happen. The release of the top 75 players, for 75th anniversary of the season, they had the top 50, like you said. They don't have to keep the same top 50 that they had before. They're going back and revisiting some of that. So some of the players that were in the top 50 might not be in the top 75. They're releasing them in kind of 3 segments. So, last night we got, 25 players, no order, not, 1 through 25, nothing like that. 25 players again on Wednesday night, 25 players again on Thursday night. So they put Dirk in that first group. We knew Dirk was common sense to be in it, but we also knew Dirk was going to be in it also because he's in some of this NBA promotional stuff that they're going to be doing for a while. I've really, you guys need to be subscribed to Mark Stein's Substack. A little while back, he did his own like top 75. And I was really looking through that because I don't know. I've been really obsessed about this, and I've been looking into
He
like
tries to make it a topic on this podcast like for the last 4 weeks.
I've been like texting Nick. I'm like, can we do a whole pod on the top 75 and like what's the path for Luka and all this stuff? And I do want to bring this up. So yeah, you talked about Steve Nash, Kid, all that. Does Luka have a shot? And I only say that because when you look at the top 50 back in the 90s, Shaq made it.
Yep.
Shaq made it, I mean, very early in his career. So I just used Mark Stein just for the simplicity of it, of who he had as locks, some recent players. He had 15 active and recently retired players as locks. Okay. And so we're not going to do any of the older players right now. And even looking at that list, I mean, it's a very obvious list of like Kobe, Steph, Tim Duncan, Durant, Kevin Garnett, Harden, AI, LeBron, Kawhi, Steve Nash, Dirk, Wade, Westbrook. Now, he only had 2 players on Mark Stein's list that were in the 20s. They're in the 20s right now. That's Giannis, and he had Jokic in there.
In their 20s, like age-wise.
Age-wise. And I'm like, what would be Luka's, like, does Luka have the path right now for him to be in that? And I really wanted to make the case. I just don't think he can.
The way Shaq made it, it was the 97 season that they decided the 50 greatest players. It was the 97 All-Star game. So that 96-97 season. Shaq had been an All-Star all 5 years, his first 5 years in the league. He had been in the league 5 years. He had also made the finals twice with Orlando. Yeah. And so
that's the thing. Luka just doesn't have the finals appearance.
He had accomplished more at that point in his career.
There's some players that Mark Stein has that he gives explanations on that I know some people in the pod be like, oh my gosh, why would you have, he has Draymond Green. And he was like, I know I'm going to get crap for having Draymond Green on here, and he goes on to explain why he has Draymond on here. He has other players on here that have title appearances. And then you're comparing like Luka. Why should Luka make it? There's players on here that I'm confident Luka is the better overall player than a decent amount of players, but it's the resume, right? Like it's somebody like a Reggie Miller. It's somebody like Paul Pierce has a title, but Gary Payton, like these guys have the longevity that it's like, all right, I think, I would take Luka over Manu Ginobili, for instance, who's on, Mark Stein's list as a top 75 player, but Ginobili has these titles. He was in the league for so long. So that's then you start looking at some of these names who might not make it and starting to compare, because he even talked about Luka at the very end. He's like, does Luka have a shot? And will he get the Shaq treatment in this? And I just don't think he will. And it's close.
And the idea is that you're projecting, right? You're not saying what he has accomplished at this point in his career is good enough for him to make the 50 greatest or 75 now greatest players ever. It's that you're projecting, okay, he's been this good so far. We think this is going to last and he's going to end up being one of these where we're like, oh, why didn't we put Luka on this list back then? So,
well, I mean, the argument for it is no one's had the start to a career like Luka that we've seen, right? I mean, statistically, everything. I mean, we have thrown out on this pod like comparing him to Jordan, comparing him to LeBron. I mean, LeBron's one of the big ones of the chosen one coming out of high school and his early success. And it's like, well, Luka's had this like crazy statistical start. He has the accolades of the first team All NBAs and the All Stars and Rookie of the Year, like all of that. He just doesn't have the title. So the case for it is, dang, Luka, talent-wise, he really is one of the best 75 players of all time. It just gets into the argument of, okay, well, he's going to pass up somebody like a, Gary Payton or something, or whoever it is. So,
and for me, I think that these lists should be about like celebrating fully accomplished careers. That like, okay, we know what you've been so far. Can you tell the story of basketball it's the same as the Hall of Fame for me. Can you tell the story of basketball with these guys? And if you leave anybody out, could you not tell the story of? And I think that Warriors team needs to be, like Durant made it already. Steph is probably going to make it, but I don't know about Draymond on that list with Mark Steins.
He had Clay also.
Yeah, but that was a big chunk of the NBA. That was like 5 years of the NBA that they just dominated everything. Like they dominated regular season. They won 3 titles. They dominated the news cycle, like all that kind of stuff. Bringing it back to Dirk, I think that you can't tell the story of basketball without Dirk Nowitzki. We have spent so much time on this podcast. Probably a lot of you that are listening now may not have heard our whole Dirk farewell tour a couple years ago, but he is he is everything he is said to be. When you meet him, when you get to talk to him, when you sit down with him, or when you just see him walk by, or when you see him take time out of his day out after a game or something like that to meet a fan that flew so far away. He just does all that kind of stuff. The charity work that he does. I think that naming him to this is massive for the Mavericks. It gives them, boom, you're part of basketball history. And I don't think that every franchise is going to get that. Like, are the Hornets going to get somebody like that? Are the Kings going to get somebody named to this?
Terry Rozier.
I know you start naming players, and not every franchise gets this. And so appreciate Dirk Nowitzki being named to this team. He is one of the 75 greatest players ever. He's higher than 75 for sure, but he's in that group for sure. Also, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is going to be the first, like, we're going to be doing a lot of Dirk reminiscing over the next few years, because the jersey retirement, the statue, Hall of Fame's coming up here in the next year or so. So like, there's a lot of stuff that, is coming up.
There was a Mavs event with Mark Cuban and everybody and players, and I think it was called the Toast Tip-Off. And our friend at Mavs Fan for Life on Twitter was live tweeting it, and he said the Dirk statue is coming to the South Plaza at the American Airlines Center, and his jersey retirement will be this season, according to Mark Cuban.
Ooh. Let's go.
So there's gonna be a lot more Dirk talk. We're gonna appreciate Dirk. He's named to the greatest 75 players of all time. Incredible. Drew Carey is on with the TNT guys right now. I have no idea why. That's why I was very distracted during that segment, because they have Drew Carey. Very weird. There you go. Dirk deserves it. He's also going to be an ambassador for this whole thing. So I think there's going to be a lot more cool stuff that Dirk's going to do and represent the Mavs. And I think that's great.
I'm all here for it. If Luka does get named, we're going to flip out, and he deserves it. I think he does deserve it. If he gets named, like, it makes sense. Of all the young players that could get the Shaq naming, it's Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
It's just,
unless you think Giannis is that guy, because they already named Giannis to it. So unless you think Giannis fills that position.
Does Jokic make it?
I don't think so.
He's got the MVP.
It's a little early now. If that happens, if Luka gets named, we're going to be. Just give you a little taste. Coming up, let's get